And we are live. Sorry if we're a little early. It's just Dan has to be somewhere at around 4 Eastern Standard Time. So, yeah, hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, and here with me is my co-host, of course, Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And happy Father's Day to everyone. And we just got done greeting a bunch of friends for Father's Day, and I've been working like a dog the past few days, trying to build up that portfolio. So, yeah, hopefully I'll soon be finished on the portfolio front and I could relax a little. And by relax, I mean like work like a dog for some big studio or something. But anyways, we've got a lot of big videos this week. That's the first news we'll say we'll announce. We've got a 20-minute Zelda video, I think like a 20-minute Tolkien video, a really long Conan/Cull video, and I think we've got a 20 to 30-minute Dragonlance video, all planned for this week. So it just kind of happened that way. So that's also kind of kicking my rear. So that's something that's a little difficult. And seems we lost people. I guess I shouldn't give spoilers like that. I'll just quickly... Actually, I have to open up one side window now I think about it, because this is something I have not really worked on yet. So I got a lot of editing to do in the next few days and lots of drawing. So hopefully I'm going to upload some of the drawings to the community tab so that people could see what I've been working on and whatnot. I just figured why not? Because, as to later, I'm probably going to upload this stream to Storyfire as a video, and I might just try uploading some drawings out there as well. But anyways, to the one person still in the audience, welcome, bienvenue. Now, in regards to Father's Day, this is something that, honestly, the idea of honoring a father these days doesn't seem very, in fiction, very popular. I've noticed that there's been a downslope in that regard in recent years. Like, Jonathan Kent is barely even mentioned or something, whereas like 15 years ago, he was such an important character in the Superman mythology. You look at Alfred, Alfred's not had a great time. Batman, ironically, actually, in Red Hood and the Outlaws, Batman's been depicted with Jason Todd as a decent dad a few times. So in that regard, Batman is kind of so-so. Although Batman's been shown to be a terrible dad to Dick, Tim, and Damian in recent years, I think. So that's a drawback. Depends on the writer, I guess. But then when you look at fantasy, given that there's not much fantasy being pumped out, I would argue, in the same way that it was like in the 80s and, well, I should say from the 30s to the 90s, because the thing is, while you have a lot more indie fantasy, I have a hard time tracking any of them down. So if there's any fantasy writers who will end up joining us, let me know your book, or if you know any fantasy books that you think are good as of late that we don't know of, let us know. But for the most part, I've noticed that father figures are on the downslope. And this is such a shame, because this is a great, and integral kind of character. In Tolkien's work, the father is often a key figure. Like with Aragorn, you never really see his dad, Arathorn, but in a way, his father figure seems to be Elrond. And Elrond was such a great dad to him. Dan ended up, and I ended up reading the tale of Aragorn and Arwen, and in there, Elrond really comes off as a great dad. Like, he's genuinely sorrowful for Arwen staying behind while he's going to be leaving because he's got to choose the fate of the Eldar. But on the other hand, Elrond seems genuinely upset for Aragorn's sake, knowing it's not going to be easy for him either. So that's such an interesting decision that Tolkien made. Aragorn's father-in-law is also his father figure. So, and that really ends up showing Elrond in a very interesting light. And what's more with Elrond is that, okay, I'm going to hearken to Council of the Rings of Power fan fiction in there. Eldarion has a bit of a almost father figure in Elrond. So Elrond is someone who never loses faith in his brother's lineage, even when he should at a few points, such as with Ar-Pharazôn. But even after Ar-Pharazôn, he maintains hope and faith in the line of Elros. And you have, in turn, his own messed up father figures who are Maethros and Meglor, who ended up slaughtering many of his caretakers, which that's all sorts of messed up.
Oh, very pleasant, I'd say.
Yeah. So, but I think the real dad, in a way, in the Fellowship of the Ring, in some ways, outside Bilbo in regards to the other hobbits, Bilbo was a great father figure. Like, you look at how he treated Sam, teaching him to read and write, teaching him fairy stories, poetry, and whatnot, and giving him an education when he didn't have to. And you have Frodo, of course, who's treated like his own child, even though they're cousins. Even Merry seems to have been doted upon by Bilbo. Bilbo just seems like he was such a great father-type figure or uncle to most of the little hobbits that surrounded him. He seemed like the sort who really liked kids and was always doting on them, giving them treats, and otherwise teaching them giving them an education and trying to tell them stories and whatnot. So yeah, Bilbo just, oh man, what a great father figure. And the thing about father figures in literature, it has to be acknowledged, is that, as in the case of Othin in Norse mythology, it's all about sacrifice. You sacrifice yourself in a way for others, and especially your children, so that they might have a better future than what you have, and a better childhood and whatnot than you had. And that's really, like, you look at, like I said, you look at father figures like Elrond. He did sacrifice for Aragorn. Oh my gosh, did he ever. You look at, as we mentioned, there's Superman for his kids, or Batman in some ways for his kids. And you have, of course, Alfred, Jonathan Kent, and whatnot. And what you have is also, in the case of, you have Gandalf, who gives up his life for what seems to be almost his kids. And I've heard it said that, in a way, Gandalf keeps his distance from some members of the Fellowship in order to better lead them. But I always kind of thought that whenever I read Lord of the Rings, I get a sense of that there's a close-knitted relationship between him and certain members. And that, in some ways, I think Gandalf is particularly close to Aragorn, Frodo, even Sam to an extent. And, like, it's just the one he initially struggles with is Pippin, but later he seems really close to Pippin. So I'm going to say Gandalf's kind of a dad to the Fellowship. The trouble is that he has to kind of look at the bigger picture, like all father figures need to when it comes to their sons. In turn, you have now, what's interesting for Dragonlance is that, in turn, you could look at Flint as a father figure. He certainly is one to Tanis and to several members of the heroes of the Lance. But on the other hand, he's not a particularly good father figure, for example, to Raistlin. And that's where he did better by Raistlin than what Raistlin's mom did, and Raistlin has a weird relationship in regards to his mother, or even Kitsiara. He did do better by Raistlin than what they did, but that's not setting a high bar. I'd say Paladine is more the father figure of the Heroes of the Lance, following on that Gandalf commentary. And the thing is about Paladine is that he's in a way like Othin from Norse mythology. He's just such a dad in a way. He's the all-father. And the thing about Paladin is that he really does look out for each of the companions.
Would you argue about Gunther?
Lord Gunther? Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, I will make that argument. Gunther is Sturm's surrogate daddy. He's the Jonathan Kent to Sturm's Superman in a way. And the tragic thing is that Lord Gunther, I think, outlives all of his sons, surrogate and biological. He is such a tragic figure.
And
but he keeps... The thing is, Lord Gunther sacrifices what he himself wants. He wants to keep Sturm close. He wants to protect Sturm because he truly loves and worries for the boy. But he can't. He has to send his son to war. And that is never an easy thing to do. Because while he's also Sturm's father figure, he's at the same time head of the Solamnic Knights. So he has an obligation to send Sturm off to war. Sorry. The dog's going off. But just as he has to give that up, at the same time, you have the interesting you have an interesting bond on Sturm's end in that he upholds, yes, all of Gunther's values, but he holds up Lord Gunther as his liege lord and father figure, and so he wants to go off to war to fight for Lord Gunther. But the scene where Sturm breaks down crying for the knighthood is one of the most heartbreaking scenes. And you have, of course, Gunther who holds him and reminisces about holding Angriff, Brightblade, Sturm's dad, when Angriff realized the knighthood was doomed, or at least its honor was gone. And so you've got this great father-son bond. And really, it's really interesting how Wace and Hickman did that, because you have, throughout the Chronicles, you have a great deal of emphasis placed on the importance of the father figure. And in Soulforge, you have a special place and emphasis put on Gilon Majere. Now, Gilon Majere was Raistlin Caramon's biological father, and Raistlin thinks to himself that his father and him didn't always get on, or at least they were distant with each other. But when Gilon lies dying and is trying to tell his sons to take care of their mother, Caramon is busy breaking down and weeping, which who could blame him? But it's Raistlin who promises to take care of the family and look out for them, and to take care of, I think it's Rosamy, or Mary, or something like that, or Rosamia, or something. I know her name shouldn't slip my mind, but Raistlin is really the son who steps up and says, "All right, don't worry, father. We'll take care of her. We promise." With Gilon passing peacefully, real, and they proud of his son for stepping up. And in turn, with Conan, now I stuck the image of Conan with Khan on his knee and Khan holding the royal scepter and clinging to his father. And I saw that image and I just thought, oh wow, I have got to use this as the thumbnail for the stream, because like this is such an image, because Conan, in almost every depiction where I see him where it's him and Khan, I've only seen a little, and Conan seems like the sort of dad who just brings his son to work every day and just dotes upon him. At the same time that he's really harsh with him and pushes him to surpass his limits. He's pushing him to be as fierce a man as Conan is himself. He doesn't want him to be one of those sons who's like nouveau riche, where he's spoilt, he's depraved, and he takes for granted his wealth. He wants Khan to step up, step into his own, but uphold the chivalric traditions of Aquilonia, but also to not fall sway to the decadence of civilization, which is a ever-present threat. But Khan doesn't, from what I understand. And Grimdark has pointed out several times. Now, I'm not yet there in terms of the stories and whatnot, reading that far in advance. I'm not yet at the point where I can say for sure about how Khan is as great a king as Conan, and that his reign is really the end of the golden age of Aquilonia. And oh wow, yeah, we just went live, Council of the Rings. So you showed up at the right time. Yeah, we already went over Tolkien with how Gandalf can be looked upon, and even Bilbo can be looked upon as father figures for the various members of the Fellowship, including Elrond, with Bilbo acting as a father figure of sorts to the hobbits, even Aragorn to an extent. And you have Elrond, of course, being the father figure to Aragorn. You have Gandalf, who I think it was Girl Next Gondor who said he has to maintain a certain distance from the rest of the Fellowship. But I never thought of it that way. And I'm going to, far be it from me to disagree with her, but I kind of do. When I read the text, I kind of see him as being a bit of a worried father, but also someone who he's looking at the big picture of what's best for his kids, so to speak. A star shines upon this hour. Yeah. Yes, it does, Council of the Rings. And we're always glad to have you here, especially since, given how great your channel is. Really excited for your next fanfic video, by the way. Especially since we'll probably end up reviewing it afterwards. But you know what? I'll throw the ball towards Council of the Rings real quick before jumping back to Conan. Who is your favorite father in the Legendarium, Council of the Rings? And actually, that's my only question here. But as to Conan, it's interesting how in the 82 movie, he's portrayed as very much a daddy's boy, and how his father gives him that great spiel. I wish we could play it on YouTube, but I think we'd actually get struck.
Hard to say.
Hard to say. Oh, yeah, it is. It is very hard to say because there's so many great dads. Like I said, there's Elrond, there's Gandalf, there's Bilbo, Elendil. Oh my gosh, Elendil's a great dad.
You even have Iluvatar.
Yeah, well, father of all creation, Dan. That's way okay.
You named Paladine.
Well, yeah, but the difference is Paladine is a character we actually see interacting directly in a non-ethereal, non-divine manner, so to speak. Not only a father to his son, but to his people in general. Yeah. The All-Father. Yeah. But the thing with Elendil is that he's the head of the faithful, and he defies all traditions and mores for his people and for his sons. And, well, you look at Anarion and Isildur and all they accomplish and how he made them kings. Like, he had no problem giving them a realm as big and as great as his own and just saying, I trust you. Lead our people well out there. Elendil is, well, he's such a great father figure in the Legendarium. Okay, yeah, good choice. I really like Elendil. And reading The Downfall of Numenor just really made me like him all the more. I really like him. I kind of lean towards either Elrond or Theoden. I really like Theoden as a dad. I think I'm going to say Theoden. How about you, Dan? For Tolkien, just what little you've read.
Oh boy.
Tough.
Yes. Because there are some that I'm aware of, like Gandalf, Bilbo, even
Gloin.
There's a King of the Dwarfs from the Hobbit.
Thorin?
Yeah.
Well, he's not a father, though.
There's Philly and Gilly, but
well, there was nephews.
But overall, I'd probably have to say...
Well, there's Fëanor. I'm kidding. He was a terrible dad.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because...
I just wrote a scene with Aldarion meeting the Druidine. Funny way they speak. Gan calls Theoden father of horsemen. Yeah. And that's cool. It seems like a very tribal way of seeing things, that the king or whatever is the father of his people. Yeah. That's very traditional. Technically, for example, the king of Denmark or king of Britain should assume such a role, a fatherly role over their people, but it seems like in recent days, constitutional monarchs have just completely said, well, we don't care, which is sad, because if you look at George VI in recent history, the finest king of the 20th century, I would argue, or at least one of them, he regarded his role as being that of father of his people. And you look at his family and at the time and whatnot, he did not have a good family. The royal family of Britain had fallen far.
I will probably go with Gandalf.
Good choice. Gandalf's a good choice, yeah. Like an elder of the tribe. It's a nice detail, I think. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because the father was meant to have responsibility, a source of wisdom, to protection,
and also to push his sons to action, like push them out of the nest and urge them to become all that they can be. Will you address how many single fathers there are in Middle Earth? But see how that parallels to Tolkien's own life. Oh, yeah. Now that I think about it. All right. Since you asked, yeah. There's definitely a lot of single dads. It's actually an ongoing trend because you look at Finwë at one point. You have Fëanor who kind of becomes that sort of, along with Fingolfin, because they step away from their wives and out of their marriages to an extent to go be single, essentially. And you have, of course, I'll say Orodreth, just to annoy, as father of Gil-galad. You've got Turgon, who's a single dad. You have Elrond, who became one. Denethor, Theoden. I don't know about Aragorn. But he's got Arwen. He's a happily married father. But yeah, Éomer. Oh, you mean like... Okay. Oh, yeah. With Theoden... Oh. I know, right? What's funny is that... yeah, that is a trend. And I think that it parallels Tolkien's own life in that he had a priest who raised him and was a father figure to him. So that I think that that's what Tolkien kind of looked like. It reflects his relationship with his father figure. I forget the priest's name, but I really shouldn't. He was an integral part of Tolkien's life. And I think that this influenced Tolkien. I'm not sure if it was a conscious thing, but I definitely think that because he had a essentially single dad raising him, it kind of influenced his literature and whatnot.
And
let's see. I meant Aragorn lost his father too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Like Elrond is a foster father to Aragorn. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a part of the lore I absolutely love. Sorry. I can gush about Elrond being a dad to Aragorn for forever. We're gonna have to make another video on that. Just gushing over that. No, I think we haven't made a video yet on that topic. Gonna have to. But
Do you mind if I segue this into something else related to Tolkien?
Hmm?
The Lewises. Look
Oh.
at how Narnia, how it reflects with you have how the children miss their father,
oh yeah.
and you have Aslan.
Oh yeah, he becomes a father figure to all of them. Yeah.
And the Lewises, sure, C.S. Lewis lost his wife, and he raised her children.
Yeah, for a while. Yeah, and him and his brother were basically father figures to those kids.
As well as good uncles to Tolkien's children.
Fair enough. That's really an underrated role, that of uncle. Like, for example, we've got a massively awesome uncle on our end. And he's always looking out for us. So you've got... I also think uncles and grandfathers should be honored on Father's Day because they play an integral masculine role for their nephews and grandchildren at times. It depends on the uncle or grandfather, of course. And it's just... I'm going to segue that to Conan, where in the Hyborian Age, you have the Dark Horse comics where Connacht, Conan's grandfather, acts like much like Conan does in his youth, but Connacht eventually, settles down in northern Samaria because he came from the south. They're part of Samaria from a southern tribe, goes north, marries into a northern tribe, and at one point in the comics, he's longing for another adventure, and he's wondering, why am I even here? Then when he's coming home, he sees the child Conan racing towards him, and he just thinks, that's why. And he breaks down crying and realizing how much he loves Conan and vows that Conan will be a better man than him, that he'll pour all of his stories, all of his wisdom, all of his love into this grandson of his. And it's such a beautiful moment. It's probably my favorite moment in terms of comic books in all of fantasy history. It's just such a beautiful moment.
I remember hearing someplace that in fiction, when it comes to a lot of fathers who used to adventure, the entire concept of the greatest adventure, they come home and they get to their families. These are fictional fathers who went traveling, adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that little adventure bug hits them. They return home and they see that the greatest adventure is fatherhood.
Yeah. I think the love foster fathers give to their wards is a very Tolkienian element in his story. I think it shows the heart of Tolkien and how he tells parts of his own life in a way. Yeah, I do agree because of his own foster father. And I think that's also a nod to Norse custom, where foster fathers were just these loving, wonderful figures in traditional Scandinavian history, such as amongst the Norse. And honestly, the foster fathers in the Norse sagas play such an important role. They also deserve a lot of respect and whatnot in traditional literature. And I think Tolkien's doing both. And that's the great beauty of Tolkien's legendarium and him as a writer and artist, is that he's able to convey both ideas at the same time, very fluidly and naturally. Maybe I should stick some foster fathers into my French literature, because, well, I've not yet done that, I think. I want to do that. By the way, congrats on your own series with Conan. I saw I got lots of views. Oh, thanks so much.
We really enjoyed creating that
episode.
Yeah, and how we introduced a couple of fathers.
Andrides, Gorna,
Kremu.
Now, with Gorna, we kind of depict him in a negative light. He's the shadow father figure. Whereas you have Andrides, who's the warrior archetype, but also a good father. And you have Kremu, who struggles. He's trying to be a great dad, but he's struggling. And
he's trying to do what he knew, what
comes natural to him.
But that's a bit of the way he grew up. That was kind of father he had as an example.
Yeah. And the idea is that he's going to grow more into he's going to grow. He's still learning, and he's going to become a better father as the series progresses. I never thought about that. That makes a lot of sense. I grew up with a stepfather myself, so I guess I noticed that part more than others might. That's a fair point. We grew up with a stepfather, but he was trash and abusive. So we kind of got a Gorna type, to reference our cult story. And our dad was more, I think we might have injected a bit of him into Andrides in some ways. He did brood a little or a lot. And our dad was, however, when he was cheerful, he was, oh my gosh, he was charismatic and cheerful. So I think when it comes to my own writing, especially my stories regarding, especially my Scottish novel and my French works, my Elvish one, I think a lot of him gets poured into some of those characters. Actually, I'll actually be honest. One of the characters is directly based off him. Like an Elvish king, I did end up deciding to dedicate that character to my dad, so that I grew up daddy's boy, very firmly. Tolkien, I don't think I could describe him as such. He adored his mom, but he also really looked up to this foster father of his. And honestly, reading about how much this priest sacrificed and gave for him is just so moving. That's a dad. And I noticed that in some of Dan's writing, there's special emphasis on the struggle of fathers struggling with the role. You tend to emphasize more the father's struggle with fitting into the role of the son, and I like the protective side of the father in a way. And I think that that's where I think to an extent, like just looking at the novel you're working on your own, and the one we're both working on, and how you ended up choosing which story we'd collaborate on. The father figures, like that you've kind of more designed, are flawed figures who struggle with the role, but ultimately are great fathers. They're wonderful dads.
And how they pull through in the end.
Yeah.
And how it helps bring together the family.
And I think you tend to write from the perspective of the father. I tend to write more from, like, for example, if you wrote Tarzan, you'd write it from the perspective of Kerjak. I'd probably write it more from Tarzan's perspective. Just, that's our different writing styles. And I think that's where, like when we were writing that one movie script, we did a pretty good job combining the two.
And remember my one Spider-Man fan fiction?
Oh yeah. But anyways, to get back on topic, yeah, with Council of the Rings, I could see how having a stepfather would influence how you might see the literature, and I think that's a wonderful way to read the text. Stepfathers can be great figures. Technically, we've got a stepdad again, and I actually really like him, but I think he's more of a buddy than a father figure.
We met him as an adult, so that would be very much a different relationship.
Although 2 weeks ago, I think I got myself a new grandpa figure, and he's really awesome.
Yeah.
So let's see. A bit of a meta question. Do you think father figures are missing in modern storytelling? Absolutely. I can't recall a newer. We actually began with this during the stream. This is a major problem with modern literature and whatnot. And the other thing is that you have to bear in mind, I think that in storytelling, as the son grows, the father should be diminished in a way. Like the father needs to step back. And that this is a natural thing that happens in real life, but it should also happen in literature. As, for example, Dick Grayson rises, Batman should step back a little. And the lack of father figures in modern cinema in particular, and in a lot of modern literature, I think is a problem. And as father figures, the father is the most important archetype in some ways alongside the mother. And you must, like for a lot of characters, when it comes to building up a backstory, I often ask myself, okay, if he's got this personality or that personality, where's the dad or the mom in all this? And that's something that, like you look at, for example, Treasure Planet, where's the dad? Well, this is obviously going to shape the entire movie. And you have, of course, Long John Silver, who's such a great father figure in there. And that's a movie that's just such a dad story. But you look at today, I don't think that movie would get made. I'm just being blunt. Hollywood has a certain angle, and I don't like it. But if you want a lot of films or cinema with great father figures, I would actually say look to Korean and Japanese dramas, and even some African ones. They are not shy about portraying dads in a wonderful light, especially the Japanese. The Japanese just, you look at the 2011 Taiga drama of Tada no Kiyomori, so many great dads, and also some bad ones, but they showcase the bad ones as mostly villains, while the great dads and great fathers are occasionally villains, but the role of the father is often highlighted as either damaging the son if he's a terrible father, or building him into a great man, into a great figure. Anyways, let's greet some people. Hi guys. Hello, Stephanie, Frederick. Always a pleasure to see you. Oh, hello, Movie Buster. I think you're new here, so welcome. We're very happy to see you. And by the way, great username. I'm just going to ask, do you have your own channel? Because that sounds like the name to a channel. If so, I might have to look it up, depending on if you've got some fantasy stuff in there, because I'm a big fantasy nerd. Well, this channel is a big fantasy fan. Great example. Oh, thank you. Treasure Planet is such a great movie. I think, is it in your top 5 animated films, favorite films? I think it's one of mine.
Yeah, I think it's up there with, oh boy.
Yeah, like Brother Bear.
I know that a Goofy movie is up there.
Oh, Goofy's such a great dad.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm pretty flattered by that. Anyways, which, hey there. Okay. See you too. Not yet. Oh, okay. Well, if you end up reviewing any movies, let us know. Even in the community tab, even if it's not related to anything, we'll be happy to check it out. Especially if it's old movies, because to be honest, I really love old stuff. Hi back, Council of the Rings. Yeah. But Conan, like, because I want to go back to Conan real quick, because this is supposed to also involve that. But remember in the 82 movie how his father passes him the riddle of steel and says, you cannot trust not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust. And I've said it before, but the sword is really a metaphor in a way for Conan and his bond with his family, especially his father, in that in a way Conan has to break the sword, which is a link to the family, in order to become his own man. But he does need to honor the sword and honor what his father did for him and built for him. That's why I think he uses that sword to kill Thulsa Doom. I almost said Fafaman, but Thulsa Doom. It's because I think that it's a matter that he is honoring his father there and kind of having his father avenge himself. Like he's avenging his dad using his dad's sword, so that in a way it's Corin, I think his name is, Corin dealing the killing blow. And that seems fitting. That said, the father in that movie really does a great job of just conveying to his son, like, this is what you need to know to survive, and your survival is everything to me. And I just thought that was one of the most cool and moving father-son relationships in fantasy cinema and whatnot. I'm gonna actually reference one other film I really love, where you have a kind of fatherly character, but he's a bit more tragic. Bowen from Dragonheart. In Dragonheart from 1996, Bowen is a father figure to Einan, but Einan ends up dishonoring his teachings, betrays them, and Bowen ends up paying the price for it because, Bowen tried to teach him all these great lessons as a swordsman, as a ruler. He tried to pass on a love for, at least in the novel, architecture and tradition and history and literature. And he tried to convey also, most importantly, the old code, the code devised by Arthur that he passed to his knights. So I think Bowen is a good example of a father character who has to do the unthinkable and ultimately put a stop to his son's evil, which is it's such a tragic film, and it's such a beautiful one, and it's one of my favorite films of all times. And the novel is just as great. So I figured that deserves a mention.
I am going to comment about the Prydain series. You have Taran that starts off with essentially two father figures in Dalbin and I think it's
he has three father figures.
Remember the entire
yeah. He's got those two, but he's also got Gwydion. Gwydion's a father figure.
Yes, and we see Gwydion that has to also mentor.
But Gwydion's learning to be a father because he seems really gruff and easily annoyed at first.
Yes, so, and in the Black Cauldron, the book, he does scold Taran, and
quite a bit.
Yeah, putting him on timeout sometimes. And the entire story of Taran Wanderer, the fourth book in the series.
Taran is stepping into his own role there.
Figuring out about who is his father is something
not yet
very important.
Not yet, Council of the Rings. Not yet. It's going to be either this week or next week or something. Just have to wait for some callbacks tomorrow or the day after, and then we're off. And it's going to be a pretty rushed move, but we're pretty psyched for it and ready. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yep. And then we're going to I'm going to basically have to try to, if I get one job as a housekeeper, I'm going to be continuing to apply for some animation and video game art jobs and hopefully make my way into the industry. And then I'll basically be working from home while Dan will probably be working as a educational assistant. So yeah, we'll end up moving, and in the short term, I don't think we'll have as much cash, but then after a few, 2 months, we'll probably be doing a lot better.
Yeah.
So, but that just means we'll be a little busier. But I'm pretty excited, especially if it means working animation. I really want to get to work in the field. Because if you work as an animator in the art department, you can easily transition to the writing department. And I'd want to work both because Don did, as did Gary Goldman and a bunch of other figures from the 60s to the up till now. So yeah, I might as well work in that field. I'm sure it'll be great. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Oh, good for you. Are you sharing where you're moving to? We'll be moving to Ohio. I don't see any reason to hide it. Um, not to Detroit, that's for sure. Not to any big city because I'm Dan can probably survive in a big city. I did pretty good actually in Phoenix because I visited there recently, notably Scottsdale. I did pretty good, but at the same time, I'm not a big city guy. So
Politan, but the energy in the city is sometimes too much for me, and I have to look out for my stress level.
yeah, because of epilepsy.
Yeah.
While I'm just terrible in a big city, I just feel stressed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, but all right. I'm actually going to throw out Council of the Rings again, and anyone else in the chat that wants to comment. Your favorite grandfather or uncle figures, primarily from the Legendarium or from any other fantasy universe you like. Because we ended up discussing father figures, let's discuss alternative male figures.
Comment about Solomon Kane, but that's more supernatural and horror.
But he's not a father.
Remember in the movie how he helped out with those children in that caravan?
Yeah, but there was something going on between him and the one daughter.
True.
That's not a father figure.
To the young boy.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to say no, that doesn't count, because Theoden was a dad to Eomer and Eowyn. Actually, real quick, I have to admit that the last scene of Theoden is one of my favorites, where he just comments that he wishes he could see Eowyn. And I think this is something Peter Jackson screwed up, because the fact that he wants to see Eowyn, but she's just a short distance away, is integral. You need that kind of tragedy there. And to have her be the last thing he sees, I really hate that in the movies. It just, I find it removes from Theoden's death. And yeah, one of my favorite scenes with him from the book, that is. And I love that his last scene is also with Mary, because he was like a father to Mary. And I love that he tries to comfort Mary as he's dying. He's still being a dad. He's just telling Mary, smoke that pipe weed for me. And when you next smoke it, think of me. I really would have liked to have tried some. And yet we also see Theoden as an individual, because we get to see that he was someone who, he says, like, I go now to the halls of my fathers and forefathers, and I will probably be I'm going to be he doesn't say in these words, but like, I'm going to be the least impressive guy there. And that shows his insecurities. But even in spite of those insecurities, he rose to the occasion, was a father to his people, came to their rescue, and sacrificed it all for his people, and also for his surrogate / adoptive daughter and adoptive son, Eomer. And still tries to comfort Mary. And so definitely one of the greatest dads ever. I have to admit, when our dad was a lot like Theoden in personality and in a lot of ways. So when I read Lord of the Rings, I kind of imagine our dad in a way like as Theoden. So, except the difference is our dad was dark and gray-haired. He had dark gray hair, and Theoden is blonde. Another uncle could be Thorin, but then again, his actions did lead to the death of his nephews. Yeah, he was a terrible uncle. Let's be honest. He was a terrible father figure to his nephews. Philly and Killy are dead because of him. It's entirely his fault. I'm just going to be blunt about it. I'm going to have to say, let's see. Well, for foster fathers, I'd say Thingol was so-so with Turin. As far as uncles go, it's tricky because now that I think about it, uncles don't play the same role, I think, in the Legendarium. Well, if you consider Bilbo an uncle, well, we already mentioned him as a adopted father. sorts. Huh. Same with Elrond. It's tricky. Uncles don't seem to play the same role.
I'm sure Bomber would be a great uncle or father.
Oh, Bomber is a great dad, from what I understand. It's mentioned. And given how great Bomber is, he should have been the main character of The Hobbit. I'm serious. No, I'm not serious. Actually, I think that Bomber, like, I have not seen much of the Hobbit movie, and I forgot most of what I've seen. So if anyone in the chat can tell me, does Bomber get a big role? I really, really love Bomber. I gotta go, guys. It was great chatting with you. Happy Father's Day, even though we celebrated it the 4th of June. Oh, really? That's when it's celebrated in Denmark. Cool. Well,
happy Father's Day to you too.
But yeah, Bomber would probably be a great dad, although he'd probably just want his sons to eat as much as him. But that in itself shows that he just wants his sons to eat well and be merry. And that itself, well, I can't see Bomber sacrificing much, because you got to bear in mind, he becomes so fat that by the time of the Lord of the Rings, he has to be carried. He can't walk anymore, which just adds to my affection for him. And hail to you, Epic Kingdom. Hail.
Hail.
So how about we turn the question to you? Your favorite father figure in the Legendarium Epic Kingdom. I'm actually looking for my pencil, as I just realized I lost my pencil.
Eve?
Oh, yep. I'm not noting anything down. I'm just noticing because I have some drawings. I got some lines that are just sort of bothering me. There. So let's see.
I have to say that in movies, my favorite scene probably of fatherhood would have to be in Narnia when Edmund and the siblings are reunited, where Edmund finished confessing to Aslan, and Aslan reaches the others.
He tells them you're never to ask him about what's happened. I think my favorite scene of a father is, weirdly, it's going to be a tragic one in movies, is Merlin telling Arthur, "You were worthy of the sword." After Arthur tells him, "Take the sword, Merlin. Return it from whence it came." Like, it's too powerful. And you have Merlin. "You were the right man to wield it." And you have Merlin, who has to walk away from Arthur. And when Arthur finally collapses on the side of the road, dead, you can see on Merlin's face just the shock and trauma and the grief. Of course, he's played by Sam Neill, so he's played perfectly. But it's just, Merlin's grief is just such a great, sorrowful scene. It's such a great moment. Have to go with Theoden. Theoden's a popular choice. Yeah, Theoden's definitely probably the best father in Lord of the Rings.
Jury rigging.
King Brago was a great dad. Oldest son goes to the path of the dead and never returns. Brago dies of sadness. Never mind, he has 2 other sons. Yeah. Or Elrond. Yes, Elrond's a great choice. Elrond just, although King Brago, there's a good choice, but Elrond is definitely one of my favorites. He's a great father figure. Though he does do that archetypal thing of sacrificing what he wants for his kids. And this is ultimately what the father is supposed to do, sacrifice for their children and kind of fade away or like step back and compromise kind of what they want and their dreams for their children. And you look at, for example, one great father figure of sorts is an older brother from Disney is Sitka.
Brother Bear. Yes.
Yeah, he wants to live. Sitka wants to live there, but like you see him how he's raised Kenai and Denahi and how he tries to manage them. He does a great job. But the problem is his 2 younger brothers are just hotheads with hot tempers, and he wants to live, and then once if you rewatch Brother Bear, you'll see that he hesitates when saving them. He really wants to live, but then he finally casts the spear and sacrifices himself to kill the bear in order to save his brothers. And I think in that moment he becomes the greatest father figure of sorts in Disney history, in some ways, or at least the most tragic, because he's technically 26 years old, which means he's young.
His brothers, both of them, just came of age. So now he has the ability to start living for himself.
But he has to sacrifice himself.
So he makes
the ultimate sacrifice. And even in death, he tries to help guide them and convey to them wisdom and protection. So yeah, Sidka's a good example of a father figure.
You have Mulan and her father.
Well, her father reluctantly makes that choice. The thing is, he didn't want to do that, but it's forced upon him by Mulan, who decides, I have to protect him. So in mythology, the father, if you look at, say, as we mentioned at the beginning of the stream, you have Othin, but the shadow father archetype in a way would be Zeus. Zeus in Greek mythology is not a good dad. He's a terrible father.
Unlike the movie Hercules.
Oh, yeah. He's a pretty good dad in there.
He tries to be as present as he could be.
That said, Zeus is a terrible father in Greek mythology. Othin is a great dad. And so you've got the two juxtaposed with each other. One is the shadow, one is the father in his fullness, sacrificing and giving to his children. With Theoden being a good example of a father who gives everything he's got for his kids and his people. And even Elrond. So, yeah. Good mention, Epic Kingdom. And the king returns. Yes. You are the king. Council of the Rings. But yeah. I think that... Well, I believe Council of the Rings also mentioned Elendil, so he also should get a good mention. Weirdly, I'm actually going to say Isildur's scene with his sons, or at least one of his sons in The Unfinished Tales, is one of them. The ambush of the Gladden Fields, I think it is such a tragic scene when you have Isildur who basically says, I'm sorry I've led you to this. And where Isildur is encouraged to abandon his sons to save himself, or at least to continue on to Rivendell and bring the One Ring to Elrond. And it's a scene where you see a father bearing his children, which no father should ever have to do, which Theoden does. And Theoden grieves heavily, and you see that in the story. But he rises to the occasion for his remaining two children and for his people. And you have, of course, although that said, Isildur also entrusted his youngest son, the only one who could not fight, to Elrond's care. So he does do a good job there as well. So, like, fathers in particular play a very important role in Tolkien's legendarium. And you see what bad fathers can create, and you see what good fathers can create in a way. Indeed. Oh yeah, in regards to Isildur, that scene's just so gut-wrenching and heartbreaking. I think it's an interesting detail that Isildur kisses Elendil. Yeah. I always imagined it that when Tolkien says kiss, I mean like kisses him on the forehead and an embrace. Like, that's how I kind of imagine that scene. I don't know if it's just my bias, because I remember being a kid and our dad kissing me on the forehead and embracing me tightly at times. I think that says something about the relationship. Yes, it does. Yeah. And honestly, like, coming at this from the point of view of a writer, I'll say that writing fathers is tricky and difficult, but it's fun. Though I've gotten my Scottish novel a mother or two, so that's also pretty cool. So, yeah. But we're gonna we're gonna definitely have to explore that some more in the Arcul series. That said, oh, we didn't touch Zelda. I think with Zelda, we'll just quickly throw out two nods. One is to the Great Deku Tree, who was a great dad. Like, he raised Link so darn well. And Ocarina did such a good job showing and conveying his affection for Link. And you have Link's uncle from A Link to the Past.
I'll add a third.
Who?
The king from the cartoon.
Oh my gosh. That guy. He was funny. I liked him. Círdan to Gil-galad. I was going to argue Orodreth. But okay. Círdan, yes. He is a great foster father for Gil-galad. Círdan definitely did a fantastic job with Gil-galad, which makes the death of Gil-galad, I guess, tragic in that regard, because that means Círdan had to bury his foster son. Hi, Mark. There's a lot of brow kissing in Tolkien, so even when it's not mentioned, I assume the kiss is on the brow. Yeah, same. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that's something that it's a masculine gesture, I think. And that's something that the masculine is very important in Tolkien's Legendarium. And Council of the Rings and I discussed earlier how I think this relates to Tolkien's very special bond with his foster father, the priest who raised him, who honestly, like, I only read a little bit of about the relationship, and it seems like, wow, such a great dad. Hello, Stephanie Frederick. Hello, Mark Scheiber. Sounds very plausible indeed. Yeah. There are a lot of father figures to Link in the Legend of Zelda series. Yeah, because he keeps getting reincarnated, so he has a different dad in each one. But primarily in, I think that the main two that come to mind are Great Deku Tree and Link to the Past.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling?
Mowgli.
Let me check that. I'm just gonna look that up. And Dan's getting tense because he just wants to leave.
No, don't. Rudyard
Kipling. He does have to go soon. I just want to see this. I'm not familiar with the poem. I tend to read more prose and the occasional epic poem, but if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and you don't look too good, nor talk too wise, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stupid and build them up with worn out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and to hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch. If neither fool nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance, run. Yours is the earth, and everything that's in it, and which is more. You'll be a man, my son. Actually, this sounds like something that I was told lately by Don.
That's a really nice poem.
It is a great father-son poem. Yeah. If not the best. Well, it is titled If, so yeah. It's rather short. Yeah, just read it. Arthur Weasley?
He's treated too much like a clown.
Yeah.
It's like he's doting, he's loyal to his family.
But he's just a punchline.
Exactly. And
so he doesn't count as a father figure. I'd say Sirius Black is the best father figure in Harry Potter. I don't remember much of Harry Potter, but I do remember Sirius Black being the only character I actually liked. And I actually felt that he should have become the main character. And that it should have become a more sword and sorcery style, darker series. And that the problem with Harry Potter was that Rowling wanted all the Hogwarts stuff, but she also wanted a grimmer, darker story. So she basically kind of, in the last like 3-4 books, twisted it. And when it would have been easier to just make Sirius the new main character and have him do the kind of Solomon Kane type stories while protecting Harry. And I know that's a weird notion. It's just after book 3, I think the focus should have shifted to him. Because, yeah, I think killing him off was a mistake because he was a charismatic, great character. Snape's is a terrible character. He's a psychopath. You took a serial killer. You took Dumbledore, the worst father figure in literature, and actually a sociopath.
oh yeah.
And you made them I don't understand. And I call Dumbledore a sociopath just because half his mistakes I don't understand. And he did end up actually, he did not defend Sirius Black when Sirius Black was being convicted, even though he knew Black was innocent. So yeah. So I'll say Sirius Black is the best father figure in Harry Potter. Because look what he went through for Harry.
Yeah.
He gave his life and his soul for Harry. In marked contrast to every other father figure in Harry Potter. So yeah, I know I'm very critical. I'm not a fan of Harry Potter, the series. Good one. Surely one of them. Sam Vimes. Who's Sam Vimes? If that's a Lord of the Rings character, I'm going to be seriously embarrassed. Let's see. Terry Pratchett's Discworld. I don't know Discworld. Is it any good? I think you've got to go.
Yeah.
All right, Dan's got to go. I'm only going to man the stream for a few more minutes.
It's been a good stream.
Yeah. Let's see. Odd question. You don't have to answer, but if you become fathers, do you have any names you'd like to give to your sons and or daughters? Now that I think real quick, I think you had talked about, what was it? Our father's name or something?
The names I would have chosen would have been, for example, Maximilian.
Yeah, that's a good name.
And Genevieve, after the saint.
Oh, yeah.
If it was a daughter.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I thought that our father's name had come up at least once for both of us.
Maybe.
Yeah, Claude is a good name.
Yeah.
I think for me, for a boy, I'd lean to words. If Dan doesn't go with Claude, I go with that for at least one kid. I'm thinking of Gawain because I like Gawain from the myths, and maybe Donald after Don, because Don Blue for my mentor and friend. But Dan said Genevieve for a daughter. A great saint from French history. For me, if I had to go with a daughter, it'd be either Ruelle, after that is to say Rule, Tolkien's middle name. I just figure why not name her that? Either that or Jeanne, after the Jeanne d'Arc. But I kind of like Rule or Ruelle. I wouldn't count out Carrot and Moist. Sadly, we never got to read about those two. Who? No, not Guinevere. No, not after a harlot from Arthuriana. No, Genevieve. Guinevere is a terrible literary figure. Guinevere would be a better choice. Arthur's true wife. Guinevere's half-sister, who is a good queen and mother in literature. Whereas Guinevere ends up destroying. I'd argue Guinevere is more a shadow queen archetype. And honestly, one of the most wicked and evil literary figures imaginable. alongside Lancelot, Mordred, and Morgan Le Fay. There's a pretty cool father figure in literature, King Arthur, as he's a very, very well, he's got a lot of kids in the original fairy tales and stories. French version of Jennifer. Yeah. Oh, it'd be Gawain. It's just that in French here. Let me see if I can. This is how it's spelt in French. But I think this is how you spell it in English. My favorite knight from Arthuriana. I love Gawain. So I'd want to go with that when I become a father. Let's see. Well, it was my aunt's name and my youngest daughter. Oh, I'm sorry. Shoot. Sorry, Stephanie. No. Ah, shoot. I really screwed up. If you unsub, I get it. Okay, I definitely owe an apology. Your aunt was probably well, if you named your daughter after her, she must have been great. And you know what? Congrats for being a mom. Your daughter must be quite the lady. And I am sucking up a little because I really feel bad. It's just that the original figure in literature I'm not impressed with. It's just every version of the story just had I'm a prolific reader of Arthuriana. So yeah. How do you pronounce the French name Guillaume, by the way? Guillaume. I guess the L's are semi-silent, so you'd go Guillaume. Because the G and the U and the I forms the sound Guy, and then you have Om, which is the AU makes an O sound, and of course you have M, so Guillaume. Here, Guillaume. Here, let me try this. You would kind of pronounce it as this, I think. Here, let me try typing that out for you. This is rapidly becoming a more philological discussion, it seems. As for Dan's choices of Maximilien, Maximilian is just a name he really likes. And there's a fantasy character from Sweet Conan that he really likes that he thought was hilarious. An elder knight who is honestly the most chivalric character you'll ever see, but he's just such a clown in some ways. But he was such a funny and great character. I think he left a lasting impression on Dan, and Dan honestly loves the name. Makes more sense. Thanks. Oh, anytime you ever have a French question, let me know. I don't mind recording the pronunciation and sending it to you if I'm not streaming or something. So, yeah, I honestly don't mind helping you out there. Now, when I say like Gauvin or Dan says Genevieve, it's just we don't really know, or like we don't really know. Well, we know how to translate at least one of them, but it's just the translation's not. It doesn't come quick to our minds. So, yeah, great stream. Oh, thank you. You'll see. Vimes leads Ankh Morpork City Watch. When he was a kid, he reads his favorite bedtime story nightly. One time, serious crime gets in the way. He literally screams the story while fighting bad guys. Okay, that's pretty awesome. I like that. I loved my Aunt Gwen, but we called our daughter Lacey. Ah, that's sweet. Guinevere means white fairy or fair one. Yes, but never forget that she's got several lovers in the Arthuriana stories. There's one, I think, from France where there's a boy or a young man who falls in love with a great fairy, and Guinevere tries to seduce him because he's the prettiest boy around at court, gets angry when he won't, and has him put on trial. And you also have, of course, Lancelot. And this is after Guinevere, her younger half sister, ended up marrying Arthur, and she basically sabotages that wedding because, well, my sister's pretty rich. I want that crown. Oh, I got it. Well, there are some pretty boys at court, so I just don't have a positive opinion of her as a literary figure, and she just strikes me as being very much like Grima Wormtongue, and so I don't have any positive opinions of her. She also reminds me in some ways of adult Silmarion. I think not Silmarion, Ankalime, adult Ankalime, who is just random question: Quenya or Sindarin? I kind of prefer. Well, okay. I'm often looking up Quenya names and whatnot, but I really like the sound of Sindarin names and whatnot, because I try to take a bit of Quenya and twist it, or a bit of Sindarin and twist it, and add like a few different sounds to it, and thus come up with Elvish names for my own world. But I tend to do that more of Quenya, so I might lean towards Quenya, though I'm reluctant to say that because I really like Sindarin. One Piece, Whitebeard. I have no idea who Whitebeard is. Is he supposed to be a reverse Blackbeard? I'm not familiar with One Piece. Name 3 characters from the Tolkien's Legendarium that thankfully never become fathers. Ar-Pharazôn, although he becomes father of his people, so never mind. Okay, so, all right. I'm going to say Grima Wormtongue. Thank heavens. Oh, you just said Grima as well. Okay, great minds think alike. Okay. Let's see. Grima, for one. Weirdly, I'm going to say Turin Turambar. And Nisma Wall. This is tricky. I'm just thinking back on. Oh, and Magellan, I think it is. The betrayer of Gondolin. Thank heavens he was never a father. He would have just ended up like Ale. Golem. I can't even imagine. Oh God. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yes, Turin. My son and sister's son. Yeah. I kind of meant like, even if he wasn't with his sister, if he, let's say, had gotten together with any other woman, like what's her name? Orodref's daughter, I don't think he'd be a great dad. It's just Turin is such a he's such a figure. I don't have the words right now. Politically, he's just Finduilas. How could I forget? I really liked her character. Yeah, Finduilas is such a great character, and like the weird thing is, I think Turin would have been a terrible dad, but I think she'd have been a great mom. Feanor is one of the worst. Let's see. Whitebeard is one of the strongest pirate captains ever. He considers his crew his family and calls them his sons. Oh, that's cool. Feanor is a pretty bad father. Yeah. Well, that's also due to, I think it's child parentification is what I think it's called, where his kids had to basically play dad to him because he was such a to kill your fellow and whatnot. And so they had to step into the role of fathers for their own father in order to always try to mitigate the damage he's causing. And this in no way is healthy for kids. And of course, Feanor doesn't really think things through on that front, or on many fronts, it seems. No offense. He may be possibly the greatest elf who ever lived, or in the top 3, but he was a handful. Oh, whoops. Could have been a great half elf, though. Yeah. Well, the thing about Turin is that had he fathered any kind of child, I think the child would have been great in a way, especially with Finduilas. I think that his, I'm going to say son, would have been probably Sigurd to his Sigismundr in a way. And his son would have probably surpassed him, if that's even possible, but would have been even more tragic because tied in with greatness is tragedy. Sorry, just had to drink. Helm Hammerhand will be portrayed as a good or a bad father in War of the Rohirrim. From what I read up, it looks like they're going to portray him in a negative role. I don't think they're going to do him any favors. I might actually do a video about that. Because it's recent Hollywood. They don't portray fathers in a positive role. They hate fathers. I'm just being blunt. If you want good fathers in cinema, like I said, go to Japan, Korea, or even some African nations. I think they've got some pretty good movies about fathers. So there's actually one of them I saw a while back about a guy who becomes stepfather to a young boy who, because he's a novelist, the young boy falls in love with his novels, and here's a novelist going by his town and sets him up with his mom. And it's, I know it sounds weird, but it was such a good, heartwarming and heartbreaking film about the importance of fatherhood and also mothers in a way. Like it reminded me of Karate Kid in a way, and with the novelist just struggling with becoming a father all of a sudden in a way. And at first he's not keen on it, but as the story progresses, he kind of he steps into the role. And it was with Colin Firth, I think it is, that prolific superstar from England, the one from Kingsman, from the church scene. I just forget his name. Azog was a father. Oh yes, he was. Technically, Sauron was father of a lot of orcs. We saw how great a dad he was. Father of the year. Yeah. But like I said, I don't think Helm Hammerhand will be portrayed very well. And if people disagree with me, that's fine. Maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe they'll do a good job. But I just have no faith in Hollywood these days. I've seen a Spanish African film where you had a great dad, I think, to the main character. It was, I think, Palm Trees in the Snow or something. It was a 3-hour epic. It was a great film. And the dad in there to his sons seems like he's a pretty good father. I'll have to rewatch that. Maybe I'll do a review of that on the Art and Literature Corner, because that was a great film. Or maybe the History Corners, because it involves history. What about Otho Sackville Baggins? With a son like Lotho has to be great, right? Oh gosh. Fair enough. I honestly don't know how to rate the Sackville Bagginses. They're just, on the one hand, they're not exactly well-behaved people in The Hobbit, but in Lord of the Rings, you get an entire arc, and that's just testament to Tolkien's skill as a mastercraft writer. Eddard Stark. Now, Eddard Stark, I'm going to say in some ways, I don't know. I know people keep praising him, but when I look back on it, now I have to go by kid. With Sansa, he could have done a lot more. He should have done a lot more. So I think he fails there. Arya, I think he should have been a little more strict. So fails there. Bran, I think he was really good. Rickon, well, Rickon's a child. Like he was obviously pretty good with him. Robb, I think he sort of screwed up, but also did a good job. It's a mixed bag. Jon, I think he should have fostered elsewhere, maybe with the Umbers. So he fails there, in my opinion. So I'm going to say overall, Ned's not a great dad. I think that, yeah, I'm not a big fan of Game of Thrones, but on the other hand, there are some good moments in the series. House of the Dragon's a really good series. I'd say Viserys Targ is a pretty doting father to his eldest daughter. I'm not sure about his other kids. He doesn't seem as close, so maybe not the best dad. Then again, good fathers are a rarity in Game of Thrones. So, yeah, I'm not sure how to rate most dads in that story. Now, I'll actually say that while I'm not terribly fond of Game of Thrones, a lot of people who are sub to the channel love Game of Thrones, and there are some great ideas in there, and that's where I think that praise should be given to it in a lot of ways. I'm gonna have to do more research for good father figures in Game of Thrones. Maybe it's not a matter of the literature, but it's more me not knowing as much. Because, like I said, I mostly know a little bit what's directly connected to the main two series, so to speak. Mostly in relation to, I study up and read up in preparation for the podcast with Jasper. But when not looking up for that, I don't do as much research. So I guess I'm a little lazy. Gotta go yet again. See you around. Oh, take care, Council of the Rings. Sorry for the weird response, Mark Scheiber. So, like, I'm not trying to trash Game of Thrones. I'm just saying, like, I do some throne tubing, but mostly it's in relation to Jasper. And I tried to, like, I tried to go read into Fire and Blood on my own and whatnot. I fell off, and thanks to Jasper, I've gotten to reading it again, and I actually like that because, yeah, you know what, I get to make more videos on it, which I do want to make those videos. It's just with the busy schedule on the channel, it gets a little much, that in real life and whatnot. So, yeah, thank heavens for Jasper. He really did rescue the channel in some ways by forcing me to read and study more on Game of Thrones. So, and I do enjoy that because Martin's World does have some good stuff in it. But yeah, Eddard shelters his kids quite a bit. I'm weird. I actually think Robert Baratheon would not have killed Jon if, let's say, you do go with the Jon is the son of Lyanna and Rhaegar. I don't think he is, but I don't like the theory. But I think that if he was, Robert's weird. I think Robert Baratheon is weird. He would have treasured Jon. And that's because Jon is half of Lyanna, and I think Robert genuinely loved Lyanna. And I think that this is Ned seeing the worst in Robert, not seeing the best, when it's his duty to see the best in Robert, in a way. And I know that sounds weird, but I think that it's more a reflection of Ned as a person than Robert. Because let's say Kat had had a kid. I honestly think Ned would have killed the kid. I firmly think that. He would have killed the kid. And that he sees it as, well, I would do that. Therefore, Robert would. But I also think that's a matter of that temper of Robert's. He thinks that's what would rule Robert. But when we do see Robert in both the books and the show, the one consistent thing that destroys his temper and that, like, causes him to always deflate is his love for the Starks. He's obsessed with the Starks. So I think that his love for the Starks would have won out. And I think that Robert is probably the most tragic figure of Game of Thrones. In a way, he's a Greek tragedy. And I think Ned, I think on the other hand, Ned did a good thing by keeping Jon away from the court because, well, Tywin would have killed him, along with everyone else who would have wanted to kill him. And there's also the fact that what kind of upbringing would the court give? Like, it's a miracle Myrcella and Tommen turned out well. Honestly, like, Jon is better off raised in the North. But I just think maybe the Umbers or something would have raised him a lot better than what Ned did. But that said, I think Ned was a great dad to Bran, even Robb to an extent, Rickon obviously. And I think that Ned should have also fostered one or two of the northern children with his own. And I think Sansa maybe should have been fostered elsewhere. Maybe, okay, I was going to say maybe with the Royces or maybe with the Tullys. I think Edmure would have been a great uncle, or a great kind of father figure to her. So I think that, especially given that Edmure is the kindest person in Game of Thrones. Not perfect for sure. Yeah. And I came to no conclusion other than Robert could have reacted one way or the other. Fair enough. He mostly loved himself. I disagree. I actually think Robert didn't love himself at all. He hated himself. And that in the end, I think that Robert didn't love himself enough. And Lyanna was what he loved most in the world. I think Lyanna loved herself and was obsessed with herself to an extent. I mean, she went for a married guy, at least in the R plus L equals J, whatever theory. But I think that on the other end, if it turns out, and this Martin loves subversion, so I think that if it turns out that Jon is not the son of Lyanna, that means I think Lyanna was stolen away. And I think that would actually make Lyanna a tragic figure, an utterly sad figure. And I think that would add to the tragedy of Robert and Lyanna, where she had mixed feelings about Robert, but Robert clearly loved her. And I think that would make the whole situation even more tragic. On the other hand, I think it would redeem Ned in a weird way if he did cheat on Cat and Father John. And I know it's a weird thought that it would make him a much more sympathetic character in a way. It's just, I like the idea that Jon is actually Ned's son. So that his uncertainty of how to help Jon and like the whole struggle for fatherhood makes more sense there in some ways. And as it's his illegitimate son, he wants to honor him and love him, but he's got to also honor Kat and her wishes. And it makes the struggle far more visceral and there's a lot more pathos. That said, if he's just an uncle adopting his nephew, there is some pathos there too, I guess. But like I said, I'm not trying to like badmouth. I'm just trying to offer my point of view, my observations. And I'm not filtering at all because I don't want to be one of those YouTubers who lies and panders and whatnot. Well, for one thing, one of the resolutions I made when I was leaving Arizona was that I'd be more honest. And I try to emulate the good behavior of my mentor and try to aspire to greater truthfulness, especially as a YouTuber. So this is something that he had himself tried to, in his life, become more truthful over the years. And I want to try to aspire to that kind of good behavior in a way. And so I'm not going to lie about what I think regarding, like I said, Game of Thrones, not my favorite universe. I don't know much about it, but this is my observations about Ned. I don't think like Ned's not my favorite character. Not going to lie. I don't really care about the character, but I think that his approach to fatherhood is very, very complex. And I think that complexity out to be respected, and that I'm just making some corrections to a drawing. He's just such a complicated figure, and that's the thing. Like, and I also think Robert Baratheon's a complicated figure, although I think that Robert probably should have arranged a secondary castle for himself, because he's the king. He's got a bunch of them, and maybe should have spent time away from the court and maybe brought Mia Stone to that castle so he could have time with her, because ultimately Robert doesn't love himself. He doesn't like his life. He hates his life. Everyone around him is against him. Everybody is using him. And I'm going to make a weird argument. Jasper doesn't agree with me, but I'm going to stand by it. John Aaron is absolutely using him. And I never got after looking it back over, I just don't think John Aaron's a good father figure. And I think John Aaron became corrupted, because remember, he appointed Baelish, and he's not keeping a knot. Like, he's either willfully blind to the corruption of the small council, or he's joining in. And I think that Robert, for his own sanity, he should have had a secondary place to go to, like a secondary home, and spend time with Mia there, so that, because he was fond of his eldest daughter. She was a good influence on him. So maybe that would have helped him, because in a lot of ways, being a father is a healing thing, where it's healing for the father figure, I think. And I remember growing up, my dad had his own problems. And the thing is, what helped him out a lot was fatherhood. It was something that, according to him, helped him. And it made him want to be better. And I think that that's something that's worth observing. And yeah, so I think fatherhood has a positive impact on people. Gotta go now. Happy Father's Day to all fathers out there. Yeah. Take care, Epic Kingdom. You're always welcome here. Okay, good observation. About which one, Robert or Ned? Robert did that with Edric Storm. Okay, fair enough. I forgot about Edric Storm. Like I said, I'm not a very good fan of. By that I mean I'm not very good at following Game of Thrones to an extent. Like, there are things I like in it, but overall, I'm not a fan of the series, I guess. And I try to remember stuff, but I keep forgetting stuff. I like more the baronial histories, like the histories of the various baronies of the world. And I like the history of the Andals, for example, but I just always end up forgetting lore details about the actual characters and whatnot. And yeah. And so that's where, for a lot of the Game of Thrones podcasts with Jasper, I always try to make a point of doing a bit of research and reading before every video, because like, I desperately need that. Otherwise, I'm going to forget stuff. I have a good memory, but there are times my memory still fails me with those videos, because I think you can tell. But that's why I keep like the wiki open during the podcast, so that I can at least have that fresh reminder. Because most of our videos are unscripted. Not only with him, but most of our videos on this channel are unscripted. But usually we can pull from memory, or I make notes as I'm reading. But with the Game of Thrones stuff, I'm not making as many notes, or any. So I have to have the notes on the computer, so to speak, on the wiki. Your breakdown of King Robert and his motivations. Oh, thank you. Well, Robert's really the Shadow King archetype well, there are two Shadow Kings. There's the sadistic king. I'd say Sauron might be a good example. You've got Scar from Lion King. He's a great one. He's the sadist. And Robert would be the masochist, the insecure masochist king who's given himself over to his pain in a way, and who's struggling. Now, Theoden starts that way, and then Theoden rises into being the king in his fullness. Robert, I would argue, in his last hours, becomes the king in his fullness. And I would argue that Robert Baratheon redeems himself when he says, "You know what, Ned? No, call off the order. I don't think that girl should die. It was a mistake." And yeah. And so you've got father figures who can be tragic figures, as in the case of Robert, and even Ned, because like Ned's kids are threatened, and he doesn't hesitate to lie and throw himself to the wolves, so to speak, or the lions, I should say, to save them. So in the end, I guess Ned is a pretty good dad. So maybe I was unduly harsh with him. I think that's the phrase. I should have been a little more soft towards him and not criticize him so much, I guess. But that said, I think with Warcraft, I think the funny thing is father figures are not really put on, not given as much focus, I think. And I'm looking at the classical Warcraft era because that's what I'm more familiar with. And when I say classical, I mean from Warcraft 1 to Warcraft 3. It's not like, say, Dragonlance Tolkien, where, oh my gosh, there's so many father figures. Or even Hyborian Age, where in the Hyborian Age, fathers also play a very important role. Primarily in regards to Conan being a great dad to his son Khan. You've got the thumbnail for this stream. Let me see if I can. I'm going to try finding it. Is it here? I think I put it in the Hyborian Age folder because I've got a folder for images for that I use for videos. Let's see if I can open this image up. It's a great image. It's really heartwarming. I love it. It's just how a dad should be to an extent. This, of course, as you all know, is Conan and his son Khan, who is later a great king in his own right. And Khan is holding the royal scepter with Conan just clutching at his son. Now, this bond is one of the most important, I think, in the lore, from what I understand. And Khan is obviously the eldest son of Conan, as well as the son of Zenobia, the love of Conan's life, and she's the love interest. She's kind of Conan's Arwen. She's the one whom he gives everything for to rescue and makes her his queen at the end of Hour of the Dragon. And Khan is, their son. And I've seen only in passing a few panels here and there from comics. Maybe I think I've seen a comic book cover. And according to Grimdark's videos, I got the impression that Khan is the apple of Conan's eye. So yeah, this is very much a bond I really like and I want to read more about. I'm curious to see if Khan maybe appears in some of the Howard stories. I'd be curious to see that. So here, I'll just do that. And I'm going to ask the chat what they think of this picture. Heartwarming or just weird? And I'll just, and I'm actually going to, in the meantime, look up Khan. Hyborian Age. Let's see. think I need to specify. Huh. Doesn't come up immediately. Huh. I'm just looking them up. By the children of the blood red doom. Huh. Just looking up some of the stories. It was created by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter in the novel Conan of the Isles. Oh, okay. So he's not originally a Howard character. I'm just looking something else up. Okay. So he's a L. Sprague de Camp character. Knowing very little about Conan in general, the picture of father and son is heartwarming. Yeah. I know very little of Con. And as far as the book club podcasts for Conan goes, we're not going to be approaching that just yet. I want to first deal with the prequel stories that lead to Conan waging war against, King Numidides. And so I can't quite comment on that. But that said, what little I know, and given this image, yeah, it is pretty heartwarming. I'm thinking I might upload it as just a picture for here on the channel. This is something that makes me want to do a video on father and son, because honestly, yeah, I really like this. But all right, stoic from How to Train a Dragon. I think I've seen the first Yeah, I did see How to Train Your Dragon, the first one, but I haven't seen it since. Doesn't start off as a good father, but comes around it, I think, quite nicely. Okay, gonna take your word for it. I wasn't interested after the first movie because the first movie did not really grab my attention. I don't know. I think it might have been because I found the dragon too small and too cutesy, and I like my dragons large, like huge and commanding and regal. And so I think that's what turned me off. And the main character I didn't really care about. I think that's what happened. I can't remember too well. I think I blanked it from my memory. Like I said, I'm trying not to lie or pander or something. If it costs me subs, then that's what happens. Because, well, doing the right thing, I think, in telling everyone the truth. Because the truth does matter. Oh, wow, we jumped to 12:10. Yay! So maybe being honest is paying off. Okay, the first Conan story which depicts Khan seems to be Conan of the Isles. And it was written by L. Sprague de Camp. Now I've got mixed feelings. Maybe after the whole rise of Conan to the throne and to being the patriae, father of the fatherland of Aquilonia, maybe I should start doing a book club podcast on that L. Sprague de Camp, Lynn Carter novel. I should maybe give them a second chance because I was very unkind to them during the Conan the Liberator novel book club because I hated Liberator. It was such a terrible novel. So maybe it's a matter that I was judging them based on their worst work, when one should judge someone probably on their best work. For example, I tend to look at Don Bluth, and judge him on Anastasia, my favorite of his movies. Or I tend to judge Aaron Blaise on Brother Bear, and even Lion King and Beauty and the Beast, which are, I think, some of his best works. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm the only one who's like, well, judge an artist or a writer based on their best work, not on their worst. So maybe I was just too hasty when I was condemning Elsprag. So maybe I need to be a little kinder. But on that note, well, I tend to be very kind towards Howard and Tolkien, judging them more on their best stories rather than their worst. And anyone who's read History of Middle Earth will know there's a lot of stinkers. And like Tolkien did screw up quite a few times. But the thing is, he had quite a few editors, and he himself was editing his own novels quite determinedly to weed out bad ideas and bad drafts. I mean, Trotter was in the initial drafts, and that was a terrible idea. Thank heavens we got Strider instead. But anyways, yeah, sorry for going off on a small tangent. And yeah, I honestly don't know Stoic. So if he's good and you love him, love what you love, he must have made a positive impact for a reason. Oh, and on the 3D cartoon front, I'll say my favorite father figure from such a story is probably Tangled, where Rapunzel's dad has that great scene where he sheds that one tear. I remember that scene just being the most heartbreaking and moving scene of all of Disney's post Treasure Planet movies, I think, because that scene was just, because I think, well, Treasure Planet / Brother Bear, I think they came out around the same time. So after those two movies, I think that was the best or most tragic scene in Disney's entire catalog after that, because that scene is so sad. And that's a scene which shows the father was a great dad. It's just he was separated from his daughter against his will. Funny how that happens so often in fairy tales. But on the fantasy front, there's also King's Quest, or at least the rebooted one. King Graham is a great dad to his kids, and honestly, I remember being really impressed with how great a dad he was, and how he always put them before himself, and how he is with his grandchildren. I remember that being the most heartwarming part of that story, because like just how all of his adventures are basically him just conveying his fairy tale adventures and daring do down to it's basically him telling the stories to his grandchildren, who are the apples of his eye. And that's something that I thought was really cool. And that's definitely a video game that I'm going to want to play with any kids I one day have. So yeah, there's a great dad as well in fantasy fiction right there. And there's also a Maurice from La Belle et la Bête, Beauty and the Beast. Maurice is a really good dad to Belle. He tries to understand her, but he's a little quirky. Though I think Maurice suffers from autism. So Belle, there is a bit of parentification there, where she had to step up and become a bit of a mom to her own dad in a way. But the thing is, her dad never lost sight of the fact that he wants to do everything for her, like in order to benefit her, not himself. Yes, he has his dream of being the greatest inventor and whatnot. Yes, Belle is a little quirky and autistic herself, but she's more high functioning. He's more slightly middle functioning, and he gives everything that he has unto her. Like he dedicates himself to benefiting his daughter and sacrificing for her. It's just he runs into bad luck and bad judgment at one point. And you know what? It turns out for the best. And Belle ends up marrying happily and getting to help her dad out by having him move into a castle. So I remember really liking that father-daughter bond. Um, I remember thinking that, real quick, Aladdin King of Thieves had a tragic ending in that Aladdin's dad really not feeling comfortable in Agrabah was one of the great tragedies, as that was a bond that was a really lovely one in the end, but ultimately the father is not at ease and doesn't feel comfortable amongst royalty, and so chooses to leave, which I guess Aladdin is ready to step into his own and be his own man. So I can't judge Aladdin because, Aladdin's got to, well, he's probably going to be a father soon. So he's got to put that forward first above everything else. And it's his own father's choice. Like, his father is his own man as well. So, yeah, that's the thing. So, yeah, overall, all in all, fathers are integral in literature. And I think that this might sound weird, but modern cinema and literature throwing out the father is a throwing out, in some ways, archetypally of tradition. And I think that our society has become all the worse for it, in a way. And I think that we need to restore in literature the father to his traditional place. We need the dad to resume the role. His, like, you look at Last Man Standing, a recent Tim Allen sitcom, which was a great series. In there, the father is truly a little foolish at times, but also clearly a great dad who's wise and loving and always puts his kids above himself. And that show does a great job pushing forward the father. And so I think that we need to return to stories where the father is the paterfamilias, in a way, not like commanding the family, but protect. We need Mufasa back, for example. We need stories with fathers like Mufasa, like Gandalf, Bilbo, Conan, or Connacht, his grandfather, or even Paladine, or King Graham. So, well, given that Graham came out in 2015, I think there's hope. And I've heard that there's a lot of westerns on the ways, and westerns often push forward fathers and whatnot. They're more masculine movies, so maybe we'll be seeing more father figures coming out. And if you look at Japanese, Korean, and even some African dramas and movies, they tend to push forward the fathers as an important integral part of society and the family. And so I think we're in good hands in that regard. So like I said, I just think that we need to restore fathers in literature. And I think that this is something that we need to stop removing them from the story, in a way. Like, well, you can have the dad killed off, but you need to have the father's teachings and wisdom and love pass into the son or the daughter. So we need Mulan and her dad. We need Simba and Mufasa. We need to restore those kind of stories. And that'll, I think, begin to push fathers more and more in real life into stepping into the role of father. Because it's been said that stories and mythology are the building blocks of our civilization. And in that regard, one of the first things to rebuild civilization is to put the father back in the home, so to speak, to restore the father to an important role in our stories and mythology. So, yeah, that's where, and I'm looking at this from both a fan perspective and also a critic, and also a historian, and as a writer, because when I write stories, I do occasionally portray characters without fathers, but then I also try to bring in, at least in the backstory, one great father figure who loves his children and whatnot. That doesn't mean he's always successful in weeding out their flaws, but at least you need that dad. So yeah, but if you want like a real life example of a good dad, I'd say Tolkien Lore Geek looks like he's a pretty great dad. From the way he talks about how he's bringing up his kids or how he loves them and whatnot. You've got like that guy's such an inspiration. But if you look at one YouTuber, I think who's got a great relationship with his dad, Voice of Geekdom. He's like, I've talked to him a few times, and he adores his dad and reveres him. So that's a kind of bond I would want with my kids, and I think that's what we need. Maybe I should write a story with that kind of relationship in mind. Well, we're kind of doing that, Dan and I. So yeah. But on the other hand, I'm not saying to neglect the role of the mother and whatnot. Mothers play an integral role in the upbringing of their children. So yeah. Mother's Day is in May, but maybe I'll have to at some point do a stream about the importance of motherhood and highlighting mothers in fantasy fiction, as that would be a discussion I'd want to have with Dan. Although for such a discussion, I'd want to probably also invite someone else on, maybe Girl Next Gondor or something. Oh wait, we had talked about doing Sauron. So yeah, definitely gonna have to do something like Sauron, and then maybe ask her if she'd be interested in discussing mothers in the Legendarium or something. Oh wait, Ari's put that up. What about Kratos to Atreus? Is that God of War? I'm not familiar with the series. I've never played it. It frankly never interested me. If you want, I'll point out a good example is Hercules from Hercules Legendary Journeys, who is a great father figure or stepdad to Bridget near the end, Morrigan's daughter, Bridget, so that Herc really steps up and dotes upon his stepdaughter. And you also have, in a way, I'd argue, Jason to Hercules in Legendary Journeys. Jason is Herc's stepfather and really steps into the role of stepfather, always looking out for Herc and always doing his best to help him out and give him the advice and mentorship that an older man might give to a younger man who's fatherless or without a male mentor. And yeah. While I didn't watch it, I heard that the new Dungeons and Dragons film had a bit of the fatherhood element. Oh, okay. Yeah, though I found that, I didn't find it a very good plot point. I was not impressed with that film. But if you liked it, jury rigging, love what you love and whatnot. And if those around you felt that they loved it for that, then sure. I just found, the movie was not my cup of tea. Too much Marvel stuff. I'm not a big fan of Marvel. The MCU, I mean. I like some of their older comics, but I don't like their new stuff. Modernity is not something I really care for the most part. But I'm a little weird. So, yeah. That said, if you want a good set of fantasy films with fatherhood being praised, you've got Dragonheart, the Merlin 1998 miniseries. Dragon Slayer does a pretty good job with the main wizard being a father of sorts to the main character. I forget the main character's name. There's also the blacksmith, who's a pretty good dad figure to the Dragon Slayer main character. There's Conan the Barbarian. The dad in there is a great dad. There's Dragonheart, of course, Bowen. And I guess Draco's a bit of a father of sorts. Although I kind of thought that he was more brother to Bowen. Narnia has Aslan. And You have, of course, all the Disney stuff where dads are like the Disney Renaissance and whatnot, where the dads are put on a pedestal and whatnot. Um, there's also Bluth movies with Thumbelina and Titan AE, which have great father figures. Actually, there's something Don Bluth often put in a lot of emphasis on fatherhood as an integral part of people's upbringing. Huh. And Don struggled a little with his own father a little. He was closer to his mother. But I believe he eventually made peace with his dad. I'll have to eventually ask him when I next see him or something uh, about that. But I don't want to prod too far. But then again, if he mentions it in his next book, I'll have to read that and ask about it. Anyways, yeah. So, oh, and I guess Sweet Conan has, real quick, just to divert to gaming, has Teal McDowell, who's a great dad to Teal McDowell. Kangaku was apparently a good father figure. Matthew Silverberg's pretty good to McDowell. Yeah, fathers used to shine all the time in fantasy. The sad thing is, Hollywood hasn't been very kind to them. But I would argue Hollywood's not been very kind to anyone in recent years, and that most films have not been great. You have a few good films here and there. You have Robert the Bruce, which is more an indie film, where Robert the Bruce steps into the role of a father to a young family, and this helps restore his hope for Scotland. You have the Tolkien movie, where the priest screws up but apologizes, and you see a good father there. You've got, okay, I think that's it, almost. Well, those are two good movies, both historic fiction, with a lot of emphasis put on good father figures. And I think that that's something worth mentioning. And yeah, I'll have to actually think about that a lot more. But apparently Gary Gygax, just to get into D&D a little, was a pretty doting and great dad who played games with his kids, board games and whatnot, and Dungeons and Dragons. So that's a pretty c'est une pas mal belle. That's a pretty beautiful thing that is, I think Gary Gygax Jr. mentioned, or the book Here Be Dragons. I think the history book about the history of Dungeons and Dragons. I think it was mentioned somewhere that Gary Gygax was a very, very doting dad and loved to play games with his kids and whatnot. So, yeah, it's interesting how a lot of great fantasy creators are such great fathers. You have Bluth, you've got Gygax, you have Tolkien. It's really, really interesting how they're such great fathers. I guess that's why they put so much emphasis on fatherhood in their stories, is that they feel that, and even, no, wait, yeah, they put emphasis on fatherhood because they consider it a duty, with perhaps the most important moral duty of a man, to step into the role of father and mentor the next generation and pass down what they know and what they've learned to the next generation. So there is maybe that, yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. Sorry for going off on a few tangents and going in random directions. Anyways, I think this stream has gone on for about twice as long as what I had planned. This was supposed to only be 1 hour long, but somehow it became 2 hours. So I'll just take one quick swig and see if the chat's got anything else to say. Any other questions or something? I'll just quickly take a quick sneak peek at Con. Huh. Okay. Let's see. Like I said, I'm just waiting for the chat to decide if there's anything else. Oh, good. My video over on actually, I'm gonna switch this to drama. I'm uploading a video to Storyfire that I've uploaded to YouTube already. Jeanne d'Arc. So that's something I should have uploaded the other day. There's only 2 people left. 3, it says. So, yeah, I'm going to pass the ball to Mark Scheiber, Stephanie, and jury rigging. Any further questions or challenges? Actually, I should open this for later. Just going to check something else out real quick. Let's see. Just close that up. And nope. So, and real quick, once again, sorry for not knowing much about God of War. Like I said, never really interested me. And in recent years, I've not gained much outside Conan Chop Chop. And the odd, I think, RPG Maker game that I find online, because I do still like RPG Maker games and indie games for some reason. I just find it addictive to find lesser known writers or 2D studios and play their games, as I have a sense that, as it takes me back in a way to, in some ways, like when I was a kid, and just guys and gals making games and fantasy stories just for the love of it. And that's something that I think that I'm just looking something up as well. I think that is one of the most fun parts about indie games and whatnot. Nothing else comes to mind. All right. Well, in that case, I'll give another minute to jury rigging and Stephanie, just so that if they have any other questions, we can take a look at that. And I'm going to have to figure out if there's any place other than Twitter I can market the stream on, or the odd Discord thread. But then again, if everyone here were to share the stream, that would be great. Okay. I have to head out in a minute anyway. Thanks for the stream and have a great rest of the day. Oh, thank you. You as well, Jury Rigging. So, yeah. Actually, maybe I should do a Game of Thrones stream at some point, maybe next week or something, in order to discuss Robert and Netta a little more. But the trouble is, I don't really want to do such a stream alone, because I'll probably run out of things to say. So I would need someone to probably challenge me and push me a little. So, yeah. Enjoyed hanging out with you again. Oh, the pleasure's all mine. And honestly, Gwen is a pretty cool name. Like I said, I like the shorter version, but of Guinevere. But as to your aunt, you're obviously blessed with a wonderful aunt. And your daughter, you must have done a great job. So congrats as a mom. And I hope I didn't insult you earlier. So do take care, Stephanie. And if you enjoyed Guinevere from the Arthurian Myths, enjoy away. Love what you love. Don't listen to anyone else when it comes to what you adore. So I have to get back to drawing. I've got a portfolio or 3 to make and put together in order to find a new job in the US hopefully with someplace like Disney or something, or Sony. And that's just because I just like animation and character concept stuff and storyboarding. I don't really care what project I work on. I just want to work on that during the day from home and write on my time, so that ultimately I get to have fun drawing, and that'll pay for writing and books and whatnot. But anyways, you didn't. Oh, thank heavens. Like I said, I do consider this a business, so the customer's always right. And there's also the fact that I actually don't really want to insult people. I don't want to come on here and insult or get angry or squabble with people. I'd rather have great conversations and debates with folks, or have great streams like this. This was a pretty fun stream. Definitely gonna have to do a mom one down the road. Anyways, till Thursday. Yeah, see you in Indie Geeks stream. Definitely gonna attend that. Do take care, everyone, and happy Father's Day. Oh, and don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button if you haven't already, as that'll definitely help the channel. And we're trying to grow again. Let's try to shoot for 2,000 subs, because, well, when we get up to that, maybe we'll have to do something special at that point. Anyways, take care, everyone.